Preparing to stream live.
Like we're good.
Yeah,
There's Karen.
there it goes.
Okay. Well, thank you all for meeting today. This is a meeting of the Budget Committee of the Wisconsin Arts Board, and because it's an open meeting, I'd like everybody to introduce themselves. And Susan, could we start with you? Susan, can you hear me?
She's on mute.
She's just muted.
And I need to step away for a second and grab a key. I'll be right back.
Very good. Well, Gerard, we'll start with you. Could you introduce yourself?
Gerard Randall from Milwaukee, proud member of the Arts Board.
Very good. And I should say I'm John Potter from Hudson. Karen, could you introduce yourself?
Karen Geschko, staff of the Wisconsin Arts Board.
Thank you, Karen. And George?
George Sugros, Arts Board staff.
And Brian will be joining us in a moment.
And we also have Dale with us, I see.
Dale, yes, indeed.
Dale is recording this in the background, which is lovely, and helped me get the YouTube thing started, which was important.
Dale Johnson, staff of the Arts Board.
Thanks, Dale. And
And Susan is unmuted.
Oh, I am Susan Lip, Wisconsin Arts Board board member.
thank you, Susan. And Brian?
And Brian Kelsey, board member of the Wisconsin Arts Board, managing director at Peninsula Players Theater.
Thank you, Brian. So we have a number of items on the agenda today, and I'm basically going to turn it over to George. And he did send the agenda out. And George, if you would screen share when appropriate, that would be appreciated.
I will definitely do so. And if I forget, I'll take the gentle nudging that's necessary to remember.
Very good.
So we've done our welcomes, we've done our introductions. There's nothing to show about FY23, but to tell, what we're going to tell is that, as you recall, the Joint Committee on Finance, in its actions on the 23-25 biennial budget, took care of the match that we needed for FY23. So you recall it was $148,000 we were looking for. We had submitted a 1310 request, but their action in the committee made the 1310 request no longer necessary. So we celebrate that. And so what that means is our constituents who were creation and presentation grantees for FY23 are now receiving their checks. So what normally they would receive in December or January, they're receiving now. And I have to say, with good and great kudos to the staff, especially Dale, who, when Joint Finance does this thing where we're splitting fiscal years, we have to encumber funds at the end of 23 and then add the funds that are now part of 24. So it's an accounting challenge, and he's made his way through it. So that's really exciting, and we're already hearing from people the great thanks.
Yes, because I think people should be, it might have had to wait, but it was worth the wait when you saw the check shift, the check changed as well, which I think probably surprised a lot of folks, which is a wonderful thing.
So just to give you a sense of why we waited, had we not gotten the match, the total amount we would have been able to grant in creation and presentation would have been roughly $687,000. Fiscal 22, we granted $750,000. And in this year, we were over $900,000 because of the increases that we received from the NEA and the consequent increase we needed to get from the state. So, so that's great. The other good news in the joint finance action is that in 24, everything's matched, so there'll be no 1310 request. And we'll talk about 25 later because it's a little bit different than that. Any questions about FY23?
So no 1310 request for the first time in how many years?
Wow, that's a great question. but it's a number of years now. So we started in that process after 2011, So when we came over and we got cut from 3.2 million to 1.6 million. Joint Finance was smart and said, hey, look, if there's any match required, because the NEA may go up and the Arts Board won't know until the budget is underway, we'll set aside $175,000 and whatever they need, they can use that from that pot, which was great. So it wasn't a 1310, but rather the money's there, you know it's there, come get it if you need it. After that is when the 1310s started to happen. So, you know, think about from, let's say, fiscal 2013 to fiscal 2022, on and off. So this is great. This is great news. Okay. Let me, since we're going to do this now, I'm going to bring up the budget. There it is, NEA budget. I'm going to bring it up and I'm going to share it. So, as John said yesterday, this is so much easier than any other budget forms you're going to have to look at. But it very well articulates what it is we're up to in fiscal 24. So here we go. Share. Can you see my screen? I see nods of heads. So the first couple of pages are, you know, what is it we have to do? And what you'll see on the second page is who's doing it. And so Karen's the project director. She's the one who writes the grant that gets us these dollars. So anybody watching at home on YouTube should know that. And then DOA's person, Leonard Wilson, now a woman named Denise Mender. Leonard has gone on to other agencies to service, is the primary contact, meaning when they need to figure out the actual dollars back and forth with the NEA, the drawdowns that we get the money from the NEA, those are the folks that are doing that work now, which is fantastic. So now I scroll up, and can you see both pages, or is it deathly small? You can see it, okay. So then we'll just run through the project costs. The first thing you'll see is the staff, and the staff is paid for 3 staff people from the state government and traditionally one from the federal government. In this case, because we got a significant increase, we come back to the board and say, we'd like to consider, as you have been asking us for a long time, an additional staff person that will help us with both the administrative tasks and the communication tasks. Yeah, go ahead.
As we're looking at this, besides adding another person, are we able to look at what we're paying our current staff? To make sure we are being competitive in the range that you guys are in, to make sure, because I'm looking and I'm like, okay, what flexibility do we have to make some adjustments here?
So yes, and so that's not reflected here, but we've heard that message very strongly from the Arts Board, and so we're working with DOA to answer that question. So we'll know better in the future what that number can be, but this is the number that reflects the fact that there was an increase, but there was an increase signed into the budget that was a 4% increase for state employees. But that doesn't answer your other question, Brian, which is the one we have to deal with DOA on. You know, are they eligible for reclass? If there are steps within the class they're in right now, how many steps can we go? Before, and I've done this before, and I do not want to do it to anybody else, where you step too far, you have to actually apply for your own job again.
Right.
Which is a complete waste of time for everybody.
Right. And I don't think we want to do that. We just want to make sure that we can shift appropriately the pay to, as much as we can, make an impact on what we're paying before we add another staff. Let's make sure we're taking care of our current staff, not at the detriment of adding another position. If you understand what I mean. Okay.
I understand completely. And I think We are also in the process right now of deciding between really exercising this sort of full-time new person or bringing on one of the interns who might want to stick around with us for a year and using that kind of help for this year. So we're looking at both of those options. But yes, just to underscore, we are looking at the piece that you described.
Thanks for raising that, Brian.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
How many hours is the administrative and PR assistant working?
So that person would be working the 40 hours. This is when we went through and tried to get the position, at least even thought about, we had to ask DOA what was the class code, what was the kind of band that we could get an employee for the kinds of tasks we want them to do. And this is the amount that they came back with for that.
Wow.
Now, as you see lower, the state also is at fringe benefits of 44.6. You know, it's not a bad additional perk. It's not what it used to be, but it's not a bad additional perk.
Yeah, well, when I'm looking at this as an employer and thinking that you guys are so underpaid, it's making me sick.
Yeah. We
It
appreciate
really is. I mean,
we appreciate
I
that.
know what I have to pay. And I pay 1/3 of everybody's salary into benefits. And I can't start people at this point under $20 an hour. And that's brand new, fresh, never been out of the, out of high school people.
Which is 40,000 a year, just FYI,
Yeah,
if you do the 2080.
right.
I'd also like to chime in on this. I think in addition to acknowledging that we're not paying what we should be paying, we should look at the fact that the burden of work that they're carrying, some of which can be relieved by that additional staff. So it shouldn't be an either or, but an and.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Gerard. I just wanted to make sure that we address without kneecapping our staff that are there and took on the work of, several people when they were in 2011, when things changed. They
Right.
took on a lot more work, but didn't see their compensation continually shift to reflect that. So
I appreciate it.
This great discussion. Thank you. The next category you'll see is state travel. And so it's board travel, staff travel, panelists. Now, all of those have been reduced a bit because we don't travel quite as much. Some of our national conferences have been canceled. There's no such a thing right now as an Americans for the Arts conference. It's no longer being done. So we've been able to scale back some of that travel. Board travel is about the same. Panelist travel is down because most of the panels now are done virtually. So people are not traveling to Madison and needing hotel and the one perk that they used to get, which was lunch. They have to make lunch at home. So, but you did, and I should underscore this too. You did a couple of years ago acknowledge that they were doing something important and provided a stipend of $250 to those who were serving on the panels, so that they're compensated for in often case, the large amount of reading and work that they have to do to review the grants. Okay. If we go down further, you'll see the arts, the grants and aids. So our grant programs. The Arts Challenge Initiative is about the same. Creation and presentation would go up another roughly $30,000. It's amazing that we would have that to give. Creative Communities is Arts Ed, Folk Arts, and Local Arts. And Arts Ed has a specific number in our partnership agreement with the NEA. So we're getting $32,000 from the NEA for Arts Ed. And as long as I've been at the Arts Board, it's been a direct match in arts education. So whatever the feds were giving us, we're matching it at the state level because we value arts education. We'd like to value it more. However, I also want to say that with John now on the board, our hope is that we're going to see more arts education applications from schools. We're seeing a lot of community organizations doing arts ed related activity, but the schools obviously are challenged right now themselves. But we hope to see some more applications from the schools. The folk arts apprenticeships is another number that comes directly out of the partnership agreement. So it's $37,000. The Wisconsin Regranting Program is the only statutory program in this mix. So that $116,700 is in state statute. All of the rest of these grant programs, when they have state money in them, that is what's called state aids for the arts, which is why the Arts Board has control of those dollars. So you get to set the kinds of programs we're doing and the amounts of money we're spending. And then, of course, the one other statutory program is the Woodland Indian Arts Program, which was born out of the negotiated gaming compacts back in the mid-90s. And it was understood that giving money to the Arts Board to support Native arts and culture was to be viewed as a good thing. And again, love to have more money in that space, but that's the number that's been traveling with us for a long time now. Questions about the grant programs? Okay. As far as supplies and services, these are the things like thumbtacks, paper clips, but also the people taking care of the computers, the telephones that we use, and the internet that we access. You may recall that the state pays for the 3 employees, salary and fringe, used to pay for travel to Washington for the National Arts Action Summit, which was the National Advocacy Day. Americans for the Arts is not doing that anymore. So there's no reason to have that $2,000 setting there. So what it's come down to now is that the state brings its indirect costs to us on the state side. And then whatever they can't recoup from what they're paying in state, they also take some of the federal dollars towards the indirect costs. When we say indirect costs, what do we mean? We mean, for example, our spots here in the tourism building, right? So our rent, as it were, our portion of the rent is taken out in that way. The service of the computers is taken out in that way. The general service billings around the cars that we take when we travel the state come out of those. But generally speaking, the only other large service contract for us is with Smart Simple, which is our grant management system. And so the maintenance of the access to their technical assistance, which some days I believe that Dale and Caitlin are teaching them more than they're learning, but the standard joke is Smart Simple is neither smart nor simple. And yet the beauty of that statement, however, is on the grantee side, it is actually a whole lot smarter and a whole lot more simple than it was in times gone by. So we are happy for that. Poetry Out Loud continues. And so that's another number that comes directly out of the partnership agreement. The NEA says we're giving you $20,000 out of this agreement to do Poetry Out Loud. And through that $20,000, we hire a woman as a contractor who's been doing this for a number of years now to organize the activities across the state, to then accept all those district-wide winners to Madison to compete, and then whoever wins the Madison statewide competition then goes to DC to compete. Very much like the Scripps Spelling Bee, but for poetry. This was a project that was very important to Dana Gioia, who was the NEA chair at a time, who was a poet himself. And the NEA has decided to continue it these many years because they like what they see in the kids who are participating. The 50th anniversary activities here, and Susan and Brian have been hearing about this for a while. We have 20,500 set aside in the budget for this. That is not inclusive of two things. We expect that we're going to see a savings of dollars in 24 because DOA is going to have to move some portion of 24 grants into 23 to close the fiscal year. When they do that, they're going to free up 24 money, which will allow us to consider where the board would like to use those additional dollars. Maybe it's towards the events, maybe it's for something else. We don't know the answer to the question right now, how much that is, though I was showing John yesterday a spreadsheet, which you have in your possession as well. The number here says it's like $39,060. But what we don't know is how many administrative costs they've taken out already from 24 into 23. So we don't know what this number is going to be ultimately.
So George.
Yes, sir.
When I saw this number, I thought that it was a pittance given what we're celebrating. Do we have opportunities for external sponsorships?
So the answer to that is yes. Here's the thing, Gerard. If we were putting down the number that we might want to put down for catering, et cetera, that number would be larger. The challenge is neither the state dollars nor the federal dollars can go towards that kind of activity. So the numbers you're seeing here are pretty exclusively not those things.
Okay.
And so
there are opportunities.
Right. And so the other thing is we also have a gifts and grants category, which is $29,000 at this point, which doesn't show up anywhere. And the reason it doesn't show up is that it's not a direct match to the feds. And because it's not a direct match to the feds, I have asked DOA to give us the answer that can we use it on catering, for example. And so that's what they're checking on right now, because it's not a match to the NEA. The NEA has been a little bit more, what would you say, Karen, restrictive in what you can use to match their money. So the challenge is, Gerard, we don't necessarily have that team that goes out and raises dollars here. But once we've determined what our budget is and for this, and then what we've actually got on hand, we'll know what we need to ask for.
Thank you.
Yeah. Susan, you were going to say something?
Yeah, right. I mean, I look at $20,000 and thinking about that's got to pick up the entire year, which is like 6 cents for each event. And I mean, we're talking about a lot of events that we want to do in a year. Is there any way that now does people's housing have to come out of this? Do meals have to come out of this? Like say just the board members.
So no, I mean the board travel and the staff travel is going to come out of travel.
Okay.
I mean, because so for example, the staff is going to travel as it would have to go to town meetings.
Right.
The only difference is there will be a celebratory portion of that activity.
Okay.
So yeah, so this would be more as we're looking at this, the printing of those swag things that we're talking about.
Right.
If there are artists to be included in these celebrations, we could use NEA money for that, right? So if we're hiring, and we should be hiring, we're not asking anybody to go for free. If
Why?
we're hiring artists, because we're the arts board.
I know, but I ask people to do things for free all the time.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, yeah, but not with the arts board.
No, you
Yeah.
can't imagine. You can't imagine what would rain down on our heads if we tried to play that game.
Well,
So-
because I was thinking for entertainers, can they maybe be, get paid and then ask if they'd like to donate their money back?
I think that is up to them what they choose to do with it. I think we need
Or we
to
might
have.
just suggest it, though.
No, I would never suggest it. I
You-
don't think that's no.
Okay,
see, in our position,
because I see $20,000 and
yeah, but we're
that could
we're
be
also
one entertainer,
yeah,
for
no,
about-
that
12 minutes.
those are not the kind of entertainers we're looking for at these events.
Right, we're
You know,
looking for really crappy entertainment.
No,
No.
we're talking about
No.
high-end artists. We're not talking about people who would appear on the overture stage in a series of high-end Broadway talent. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for Wisconsin artists who will come and celebrate with us and do their finest work. But there's no way we would be in that other space. Number one, and number two, the reason we're really underscoring this for you here is that we know what the perception is out in the field. And the artists are some of the greatest benefactors because they are often asked to donate their time or donate a piece to the auction or whatever the case may be. And that's fine for everybody else but us. We can't be in that space.
I have taken, Susan, I think I said this before, but I've taken to saying when someone calls and says, we're going to be doing a silent auction, do you know of any artists who will donate some work for that? They love our arts council. It's great. And my response is, as soon as you can tell me the name of the accountant or plumber that will do some work for me for free, I'm happy to think about who I might.
Absolutely.
But these are
Okay.
professionals, right? So, and honestly, Susan, I totally hear what you're saying. It's just that when this celebration of our 50th, we're celebrating the work that we've been able to do in supporting and nurturing the arts ecosystem, including the artists, and we've been able to do that over our 50 years. And to do something that looks like we're doing it on the back of the artist just to celebrate is just not one of those options.
Yeah. So especially,
Yeah, I'm so used to doing everything,
absolutely.
You're
like
in the
you
four.
have
four
Yeah,
cents on the dollar.
yes,
Susan,
you're in.
a relationship with the artists than the arts board does, for sure. I mean, Full Compass does. There's a very different kind of understanding, and
It's not even full compass. I'm thinking about all the circus worlds, the chamber orchestras, the symphony, all these people that I work for. I try to get all the artists for free.
Just so you know, like anything
Doesn't
we
happen
do-
often, but it
No.
does.
But at Peninsula Players, we have a donor thank you event, and we invite our company members, actors, and we pay every single one of them if they are going to sing, or because we'll ask them to do like 15 minutes. We
Mhm.
pay them all, we feed them, we include them, but at the theater, we pay them
Okay, just
because,
wondering.
yeah, I can't ask them to give up their time and talent.
Yeah, well, I'm constantly running events for different organizations, and that's how we raise money.
Right. No doubt.
I
Understood.
think about the $2 million that I raised in a period of 7 months. I mean, seven seasons for Circus World.
No.
Circus, for God's sake.
I understand, but most of the artists that if you're asking an artist to do something, they're not recipients of our grants either. So we're asking them to give up theirs
That's-
to give to other. So I just think it's a road we shall not walk down, and we will hold our heads high and compensate the artists accordingly.
Okay,
And just to because I think this is a piece of history that we haven't articulated, but prior to 2011, we actually had an individual artist program. We were able to recognize the finest artists in the state and the visual arts, media arts, music composition, dance, choreography, etc. After that, we couldn't anymore. And the only argument we could make at the time was that the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. And by supporting organizations, you're hitting as many people as you can. If you're supporting the individual artists with a fellowship, which let's be honest, they absolutely deserve. And in the age of the creative economy, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to lift those people up and into view? However, we just don't have it. And so that's the other piece that is the historical background to why we wouldn't want to do that with the artists. So, and sometimes we forget to say that part out loud as well. So the access expenses, you know, the access committee has done some things, and they'd like us to remember to think about sign language interpreters and translation along the way. And so we've set aside some dollars to do that. Here, we also have gotten money from Arts Midwest in two ways. One, from the NEA through Arts Midwest, to do the study of our space, our access space. So we got money from them to do that. And then also to send somebody to the LEAD conference, the accessibility conference, the NEA and the Kennedy Center put on together.
And that's been something Dale's attended, yes?
He
Like
has.
Dale is, yeah.
He has. And unfortunately, this year it comes at a time of his vacation. So, and then finally, we did put some money for the interns. So you see, the actual administrative PR assistant, the pot of money for that right now is a total of $51,000. So better than 43, probably not exactly where we want it to be. But that gives you a sense of how we broke things down for the NEA. If you flip the page, you see the state general purpose revenue and the state program revenue.
You have to flip the page, George.
It's
Oh, it's already there. Yep,
it's,
no,
yeah,
no,
it's
we
already
see
here.
it.
Yep.
Yep.
So the bottom line, the budget for this year is 2,156,000, which is up from, let's see, 954.5 twice, right? So that's what it was last year.
Up
When
from
we find,
1.9, like up from 1.9 million?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because but remember, we didn't have that 1.9 until joint finance finished its work. So had we known, and this was the beauty of what Senator Balwick said at the time of joint finance, she said, you know, it would be really good for the arts board to have the money so they can plan. And she was right. She was absolutely right. So the difference here is we're able to know what we've got and allocate it appropriately, with the caveats that I think you've talked about, which is make sure you're paying the staff and appropriately. Keep your eye on what the celebration looks like and where those dollars can come from, and make sure that the budget is good enough for that. So I think part of what's really interesting about the points that you were making about where do resources come from, I think one of the groups that's untapped but is now come into view a little bit better because of the work around the 50th is the alumni board members. So when you meet an alumni arts board member on the street and you say it's the 50th anniversary, the first thing they want to know is, tell us what we can do, right? So I think that's our challenge going from this place forward. Now that we're developing the list and it's healthy and it's good and we're not bouncing emails all over the place. Now we've got people who are genuinely interested and want to do the work. Paul Meinke, bless him, and the work he did on the logo for the 50th and the masthead for the Arts News. And at every turn, he's looking for another way to help. And when you ask him why, he'll tell you it was one of the most pivotal moments of my life to be a member of the Arts Board. And I just want to give back. So in that respect, we have the potential to grow some of those pots if we're going back to just our own people and asking them for help when we know what that help is we want. Any more questions about the NEA piece? So this, we're not going to ask you to approve this, because what we're going to end up having to do with DOA is actually slot this into the forms that you've seen before for the budget. And so, for example, if we're able to move things as far as salary is concerned, that's what we want you to see as the final thing before you recommend to the board.
Is there anything we need to do, George, as the board to help with the salary, or is it 100% you through DOA? Because isn't it kind of awkward being the person asking for?
Oh, no, it's not awkward
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
No, I mean, it's what they would expect us to do. And, you know, I think Karen has certainly done that over the years with the people that have been in her charge. And, you know, again, it's the question of, can we boost them up? If we can't boost them up, can we find another class code that will help us boost them up without, again, having to apply for their own jobs?
Right. Without, yeah, I wasn't sure if, because it's that you report to a board, that there are
Right.
people that you report to and your structure up through that. If there's anything or anyone, if you need us, tell us who to contact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Will not hesitate. Will not hesitate. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing this. You've seen it long enough. Okay. So we talked about the staff increase. We talked about the monies paid 24 to 23. What we didn't talk about, John, I mentioned to John yesterday, we were informed that every 13 years, there's a 27th pay period. This happens to be one of those years. So, but again, and I might not have said this as directly before, the state will supplement that. So that period will be supplemented, but only for the 3 staffers. So anybody who's paid for out of state dollars, they will supplement. Anybody who's paid out of federal dollars, we have to go into the dollars we have from the NEA and supplement. So it's not like we don't have it. It just means we may have to reduce some of those lines to make it
And does
happen.
that mean, is Dale the NEA staff? Yes. Okay. John's nodding his head.
Yeah. And so will this other person be if we decide to go down that path. But yeah, we've done it. We've had to do it over time, and we've always done it. So I'm not worried about that. But it's one of those things that it's stuck in this place over here, and I want to make sure it's out there for you all to know as well, so that we all are operating with the same information. Any other questions about that? 24. Okay, so 25. So joint finance took care of 25 by saying it's the same as 24, right? So $1,078,000, they'll match $1,078,000. So if that works, we'll have the whole biennium not to do anything. If it's not, Senator Baldwin said to me very clearly, if it doesn't match, come back to me, we'll get it fixed. What a beautiful thing to say. Also, you know, because the federal government is going through some things right now, there's been questions about what their fiscal 24, which is our fiscal 25, is going to look like. The House has decided fiscal 24, our 25, should be 10% down. So the NEA goes down 10%. The Senate has said, the Senate Appropriations Committee has said status quo. So they didn't increase it, and like it's been increasing over time, but they said, no, we're going to keep it where it is. So now comes the negotiation. We'll have to see what the ultimate result will be. But in any event, if it stays the way it is, we've got that match. If it were to go down, well, in theory, we'd be overmatched. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
George, I have a comment. I want to back up.
Yeah.
And talk about the importance of having champions in the room when these decisions are being made. And to have Senator Baldwin as one of our champions, not just in the caucus, but also on joint finance when those decisions are being made, I think was very important and has contributed to lessening our worries about whether or not we'd have to continually go in with a 1310 or not. And I would argue that we need to show appreciation to those who champion our cause within the legislature and hopefully expand the number of champions that we have so that going forward, we won't have the need to worry about whether or not we have to marshal our forces to go and twist arms to make the case for the arts. But we've got those who understand us and can go in and make that case for us.
And it just, yes, and to that, Gerard, is that they understand that we're currently underfunded as well. What that they have done, which we're appreciative that we don't have to do the 1310, but it's not enough. And so I think we still need to tell our story as to what the arts need and to find those champions and to thank those champions for helping move the needle on this so they don't think we're content with the status quo.
Amen.
And I just want to make sure you know that when all was said and done, I wrote to the co-chairs and to Senator Ballweg and to Representative Goyke and just said thank you. For the co-chairs didn't have to bring it up; they could have just let it go by, but they did. And I thank Senator Ballweg very much for being a champion. As with Goyke, who always raises his voice in support of the arts. It was funny this year because he knew that they were going to do something good. The majority party was going to do something good. So he was somewhat taken aback by what he was trying to say. But in the end, it was a beautiful day because honestly, it demonstrated bipartisan support for the arts. While the Democratic motion went down, the Republican motion was successful and unanimously on that side of the aisle successful. It wasn't anybody taking the position that, well, because it's going to pass, I'll just say something different. No, everybody voted appropriately so from our perspective, right? So it was wonderful. And yes, champions, we agree. And it's not ours to talk about, but I will mention that our friends at Create Wisconsin are working to bring back the conversation around the Wisconsin Artistic Endowment Foundation, working with Michael Best Strategies and champions that they're cultivating in the legislature. So we'll see what it is they ultimately are able to put forward. So,
George, I send thank yous to those same folks as well.
that's excellent. That's excellent. Yep, and that was really what was too good too is that people from the field did it as well. And as you saw, we held Senator Ballweg up in all of our conversations and all of our writings about what happened, so that it was not a hidden secret that she was a champion, but it was right out there for everybody to know. One of the things, Gerard, just to think about this for a second, as we put out the 50th anniversary information and put it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, the other side of the aisle jumped on it. And so the Wisconsin Senate Democrats and the Wisconsin Assembly Democrats liked it and celebrated, and were moving out to say Arts Board is 50 years old. So we got to get the other side to get into the social media space and say something nice. So we can talk about how you think we might be able to make that happen. So yeah, again, underscore the bipartisan nature of what it is we do. I think that's it. I think that's it for today.
Any new business?
So the next thing you'll get from us is something in the normal form so that you can look at it and approve it. And as you say, hopefully seeing some movement on the salary side, and also with better information about the event itself or events themselves. But thank you for spending time with the numbers. It's really important.
Susan and Gerard and Brian, thank you so much for your participation and thoughts today. And George, thanks for guiding us through it.
Happy
Yeah,
to do
thank
it.
you all.
Thank you, John.
We'll close this meeting then.
All right. Take care,
Adios.
everyone.
Enjoy the day.
And Susan, I'll give you a call.